You're listening to the Grown and Growing podcast with Sonia and Roberta. Welcome back to the Grown and Growing podcast. I'm Sonia Hamlin.
And I'm Roberta. Welcome back. And we're going to keep the energy going. Last week we had guest appearances. We have guest appearances again today. Today we have Deb Dennis. She's an attorney and a member and moderator of the DMV chapter of Black and Poly, which was formed 10 years ago. And so that kind of leads us into the topic for this week. We're exploring polyamory. And so today we're going to have an educational discussion about the topic, the good, the bad, and the misperceptions.
So I'm super excited to have this conversation because I feel like polyamory or ethical non-monogamy, which is what it's also known as, pops up as a conversation on the interwebs every 90 days. It'll come up for one reason or another. But I am also interested in it because, we're having grown conversations around here. And I know the first thing people think about when they think of polyamory is one of the elements of all relationships, which is sex. But we have Deb here, who is not only an accomplished attorney, she's also a family friend. We have her here to kind of break down the myths, the misconceptions, the truths about what it means to be in a relationship that is non-monogamous. So she's going to walk us through. As Roberta said, you're a member and a moderator for the DMV chapter of a group called Black and Poly. Black and Poly was started 20 years ago. And now today they have 43,000 members across the US. So I just want everybody to know, just walk away with a better understanding of it, just like I did. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here and answer questions and have this grown conversation.
Yes.
Very grown.
Before we get started, Roberta.
Yes.
Ma'am, very important. What are you drinking tonight? Pretty. That's pretty.
Very pretty. Yes. I'm having a rosé tonight, an Italian rosé. So this one is called Cora. It's Italian and it is made out of 100% Montepulciano grapes. But yeah, it's really bright. It's very light. It's not sweet at all. I'm very dry.
Your favorite kind of wine.
Favorite kind of wine. And so we did have this on our site. We actually sold out. This is this is a nod to our wine club because we had this in our April wine club. And we try to find those fairly rare-ish, but really good wines. And we usually just get enough for the club. But we could get some more if by request. But yeah, that's a nod to join the wine club because we actually do some pretty exclusive wines.
Very nice. Deb, ma'am, are you drinking? Are you having a drink? Are you joining Roberta?
I'm not as refined as Roberta. So I have my little tumbler with my dragonfly on it.
Cute.
And this is a vodka elderberry peach cocktail.
Nice. Did you mix it yourself?
And it's refreshing. No, but I won't mention the brand, but you can find it. And it's refreshing. It's light and it's not overly sweet. And it's perfect for this conversation.
Yes, it is. Well, that's a nice introduction to you. We should just get right into it, Deb.
Right into it. All right. So let's kick it off. So let's start with the basics and the understanding of put us in context of what is polyamory, and would you even use that term to describe the types of relationships that you have?
Sure. So polyamory is one of many relational dynamics under an umbrella called ethical non-monogamy. So we all have had, experiences with non-monogamy. And we know people who have had experiences with non-monogamy. And what I'm referring to is cheating. This, however, is considered ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy. And that's the practice of engaging in romantic, oftentimes sexual relationships with multiple people, with everyone involved giving consent and knowing all about it. And so polyamory, like I said, is just one of many dynamics under the ethical non-monogamy umbrella.
Deb, I've known you for a really long time, probably 15, 20 years. We've known each other. And so Is this a new relationship for you? I'll let you tell like how you decided to be in a ethical non-monogamous relationship. And how do you describe yourself and how do you, talk about the type of relationship that you're in?
So I've always been ethically non-monogamous. I just didn't realize that that's what I was. There wasn't a name for it. And there's an evolution to this. So as a young woman, I would date several men because I'm heterosexual, but I would date several men simultaneously, concurrently. All of them knew that they were not exclusively dating me. I made that clear. And, that's just what typical monogamous women and men do. If they're being ethical, they say, hey, you're not the only person I'm dating. I'm just dating. The difference is with monogamous people, we tend to date with the end game of finding someone to call our own, to settle down with, to be exclusive with, to ride that relationship escalator with, hopefully. And so I practiced that. And then when I met my current partner, and we met, by the way, over COVID in 2020, and he explained that he is ethically non-monogamous. And I'm like, what is that? What do you mean? And he explained it. And I said, well, that's what we monogamous people call doing your own thing, doing your thing until you settle down. And he's like, well, no, not quite. This is a little bit more intentional. It's an intentional conversation so that everyone is well aware of what's happening within the relationship and outside of the relationship. And so I still consider myself monogamous. My partner considers himself ethically non-monogamous, polyamorous to be exact. We are in what they call a mono-poly relationship. That's also a dynamic under the ethical non-monogamy umbrella. So we're in this, it's called monopoly. It's very rarely discussed. People within the polyamorous community oftentimes think it's not a viable type of relationship because there are two opposed dynamics trying to make it work. Opposite ends. One is polyamorous, one is monogamous. How can that possibly work? But it does work. Now, my partner considers himself a polyamorous as his identity. He says he's polyamorous through and through. There are people who say, well, it's not my identity, but it's my practice. I, from time to time, practice ethical non-monogamy. I, from time to time, practice polyamory, but it's just not who I am. Some people believe they're born that way. That's why my partner says, I was born this way. That's why it is my identity. Some people are choosing it. And so they choose to be polyamorous. So another term that could be used for me is ambiamorous, meaning I can exist peacefully, calmly, happily within either dynamic, whether I myself decide to practice polyamory or remain monogamous. So just to give you a couple of dynamics that fall under the ethical non-monogamy umbrella.
Okay.
So that's how I identify now, Sonia. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised by it. Just the way you described it. I do wonder when you learned that he was poly, like that's how he identified. Were you immediately okay with it or did you have to learn more about it? Why do you personally just feel comfortable with this type of relationship? What is it about your personality that makes you okay and happy in this type of dynamic?
First of all, to be honest, it was COVID. I wasn't really dating anyone. A friend of mine said, Deb, it's time for you to get out there and start dating. We created my dating profile on Hinge over some shots of tequila and we started swiping.
As so many profiles begin.
Yeah, I was like, courts were closed. What am I going to do with my time? And I ran across this handsome guy who had a lot to say, and I thought, oh, he will be fun. So that's how it started. That's how it started. He'll be fun. He's going to be a good time. And then, as I got to know him, started talking to him, his honesty, his transparency, and he's just brilliant. His worldliness captivated me. I thought this is, he's a good guy. Easy to look at, he's not hard on the eyes, and he has something to say. So I looked beyond his relational dynamic and looked at the person and also related it to my life. I've never been someone who was traditional in my relationships and how my relationships came to be. Even in my monogamous relationships, I just needed time for myself. I actually built in time with the people I've either dated or married and said, listen, I know we're married or I know we're exclusively dating, but I'm going to need these time alone and away from you. And that's
That's not
from
normal.
a
That's not
lot of,
typical because I do that. I do that too.
yeah, well, you know what? It's good that you do that, but no, it's not seen as
Mm.
something that a woman should do when, when you love a man and a man loves you. Why aren't you guys stuck to the hip?
Oh.
Mm.
Well, I think that's interesting because you do hear more people are talking more about having relationships where there are clear separations, like they sleep in different rooms. I interviewed somebody who lived in a completely different house than her husband. He lived 5 miles down the road. She lived in this house, and that's what worked for them, but she would still describe herself as happily married. I mean, I think that just brings us back to why we wanted to have these conversations, because there are many ways to have a relationship where you can be happy. And so we wanted to explore this kind. And so you guys, what did you call it? You said monopoly. You're in a
Yeah, that's just
monopoly
shorthand
relationship. One
for
person.
monogamous hyphen polyamorous.
Okay. I didn't pick that
Yeah,
up.
that's what it is. Monopoly
Okay. What other
and other dynamics. So,
what other
okay,
types of
let's go through them.
relationships?
So you have swingers, right? So the swinging community is under ethical on non-monogamy, polygamy, polygyny, um, polyandry, holopoly,
You have to explain what these are.
Right,
triads.
because I'm like, okay, do I need to go Google these real
I was
quick?
I was with you and then I was like, wait, hold on. Polygamy, that's married to, which is illegal. Isn't polygamy
Oh, it
illegal
comes
in the
out in the
United
States, I
States?
think.
Well, it depends on where you are. It
Except for
depends on where
Utah,
you are.
Colorado.
Yeah, it depends on where you are. But yeah, it is it is illegal in Maryland for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Polygyny, which is one man, several women. One man with several women partners. Polyandry, one woman, two or more men.
That's the one you don't talk about. We don't hear
We
about
don't
that
hear
one
about
too
that one as
much.
much.
You don't. No one wants to talk about polyandry because it's actually very empowering for women, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's empowering for women, but it also looked at down as like a negative for a man, like to be in a relationship with a woman who has multiple relationships.
Oh yeah. I mean,
But,
the men definitely get a lot of pushback from their male counterparts. Like, how are you letting her do that?
Hmm.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
As if we are, chattel, or a possession. So, but ultimately, it's the woman's choice. It's the woman who decides, I want to have more than one male partner. Now, historically, you look at, pre-industrialization, women from poorer countries typically would marry two brothers. It was a means of survival when you have to, farm or you have to work, and so that happens, that exists. Nowadays, when women were more independent, we're making more, especially Black women, when it comes to our education level, the money that we make, we're kind of outpacing our men, so now it's more of a choice. I don't want to have one husband. I don't want to have one significant male partner. This is what fulfills me. But it's very rarely, which is interesting, very rarely discussed in the broader community or society, and even more so rarely discussed within the ethical non-monogamous community. There are women who have multiple partners, but everyone wants to focus on the man with multiple women. And my
Yeah.
introduction to it was years ago, was a negative introduction when it was in DC in the 90s when they were talking about man sharing. That was the term, man sharing. They were having conversations on the air about, these women who date one man and they have their day with their man. And I was like, who would do that? The negative part of it is that the women only can date that one man. They don't have the option, or they choose, or they're thinking, I don't have the option to date another man. We call that one penis policy, where a man says, no other penis in this dynamic. I can
That's
have
so
as many
controlling.
partners as I want.
Oh,
And
no,
so
no, no.
that was
See,
my,
I would have,
yeah, that was my,
have a problem. So for things like that, like I feel like communication is really important. And before you can get to a level of communicating about these kinds of things, you got to be real sure about what it is you want, about what it is you're capable of, or how, all the different, human emotions of envy and all the other things come into play with yourself before you can successfully, communicate to someone else your needs and wants and what you're capable of.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that brings us to, conversations about how do you exist within a polyamorous relationship. And this is one of the misconceptions, is that polyamorous people don't get jealous.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not true. That is
Yeah.
not true. In fact, what I admire about the polyamorous community is they, one, acknowledge I am jealous. I'm jealous of this other partner of yours because that person, whatever the case may be, but the community is really big on feeling your feels, sitting with it, identifying why you feel that way, and having a conversation with your partner. So I'm going to use myself as an example. My partner has other partners. There was a time when I had other partners. We are in what they call a V. So my partner is the hinge in that V. There's me on this side as his primary partner, and then he has secondary partners on this side. And that's another conversation about, some people hate the term primary and secondary, but but he has
Do
his
the other ladies
secondary.
know that they're secondary, or is that
Yes,
known in the relationship? Okay.
that is
Communicated.
known. That is communicated,
Okay.
because one of the cornerstones of polyamory is honesty and communication. Everyone, see, in the definition, it says everyone consents to it and knows about it. Like, they consent to being in this dynamic. And the only way you can consent is having full disclosure, full information. And so yes, they know. They know about me. I know about them. When I had other partners, my partner knew that I was dating other men, and we keep a calendar. And so I look at the calendar and say, oh, tonight he's with such and such. He could look at the calendar and say, oh, Deborah's with whomever. We're pretty good with that calendar, and we have designated Tuesdays, Thursdays, which is tonight, and part of the day on a Saturday or Sunday. And we do that because everyone involved in this dynamic, they have feelings. We have to be respectful of their time and their willingness to be engaged in their relationships with us.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't say to my secondary partner, oh, I made plans with you on Wednesday, but my primary partner came in and said, oh, he has a work event, so I got to push you off. So that is why we decided, everybody knows Tuesdays and Thursdays are our times alone, whether I'm sitting here on a podcast speaking about polyamory or whether I'm on a date, but that is our time separate from each other.
Mm-hmm. So what makes you primary? Why do you describe yourself as the primary partner? And how is that different than his relationships with secondary partners?
So we identify so it's not me per se. I would say our relationship is
Mm-hmm.
the priority relationship. We have made a commitment to each other to do life. We commingle finances. We spend the bulk of our time together. Outwardly in the community, we are a monogamous couple. Our family, we have decided that we will be exposed to each other's family, but our partners are not. We travel together. We are what they call fluid bonded, meaning we engage in unprotected sex. Oh, I see Roberta's face. Roberta's like, huh?
I've never heard that phrase, fluid
What?
bonded. That's new for me.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm going
I've
to use
never
it. I
heard of it.
don't know exactly how I'm going to use it, but I'm going to use it. Okay.
I
it's
didn't know
fluid
what you
bonded.
meant. I thought fluid as in you go this way, I go that way.
I mean, it could mean that as well. However,
an actual fluid, like a real fluid. Okay, got
Fluids.
it.
Fluid.
I was
So,
lost.
it's
ooh, catch up, girl, catch
you
up.
know, so fluid bonding is just choosing to not use barriers during sex with each other, but we use barriers with our other partners. Which brings me to the testing. I mean, that's a boundary. One of the boundaries is that we all, when we are engaged in sexual relationships with other people, that we use barriers with those other people. Everyone is tested regularly.
So I have a question about where everybody's mind goes. Sex, right? They go straight to sex.
Yeah.
Like that is the primary reason for somebody wanting to have multiple partners. And so I'm gonna ask, like, what do you get from these other partners? What else are you getting from them besides sex? And do you know that going out? You say, oh, this is just for sex, or no, this is conversations. You do hobbies that, my primary partner doesn't do. What is it that you're getting from these other partners that you couldn't get from your primary?
So let me start this part of the conversation with there are people who are polyamorous and asexual.
Okay.
Fair.
They are, they are polyamorous. They have these romantic relationships with people and they may not be sexually involved with them or engaging with them. So that's also a thing. And a lot of asexual members of the polyamorous community will scream it loud and proud, like, don't make this all about sex because I'm asexual. Now, to your other question about what do I get that my partner that I'm not getting from my partner, there's nothing that I'm getting from my other partners that my partner does not provide. And that's another thing about polyamory is it's not always about your partner's lacking in something, so you have to go over here and get it from someone else. Sometimes it's, hey, he's funny and we're having a great time. I'm attracted to him. Why am I going to not engage with him? And I think we even in relationships that are monogamous, you're walking down the street and someone smiles at you, you're like, oh, he's handsome or she's good looking, whatever the case may be. And because you're in a monogamous relationship, you're like, well, they're hands off. Versus, let me explore this person. Let me have my experiences with this person. As long as I'm honest and say, I am in a relationship, I am polyamorous, then why not engage with that person, get to know? Sometimes it does not even end up being sexual. Then it becomes something else. And you're like, oh, we're just friends. He's cool. So it's not limiting yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Looking back on my history of relationships, and I've had a lot of relationships, hearing that makes me think about all the times and opportunities where I met someone that of the opposite sex where I was attracted to, and not necessarily in a sexual way, but just as you said, like I just vibe with this person, but I happen to be in a monogamous relationship and I just cut myself off. I just proactively, preemptively cut off any potential feelings. I don't know if feelings would have developed, but like any kind of engagement, as you put it, I just cut it off because I'm like, okay, I can't do that outside of my relationship. But also, like logically and cerebrally, I'm like, well, no one person is going to satisfy all of the things that I'm personally interested in, from physical all the way, emotionally, mentally, all the different ways. So if I know that going in, that's just not natural, but also I'm like cutting myself off and not allowing myself to explore, then what kind of space, what kind of box am I putting myself in?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I had the opposite feeling when you were describing that. I instantly felt, I'm like, I wish you would. I felt feelings of jealousy. I was like, wait a minute. No. I was like, and I hate to feel that way, but no.
Why?
You cannot.
Why do you hate to feel that way? It's fine to be jealous.
It is. It's just the type, it's just my chemistry. And I think it's funny that you were feeling like, so I should really be exploring that, or I've cut myself off from exploring something that could be potentially very nice. Roberta, I have not been in a lot of relationships. I have been with Derek for, 25 years, and clearly I am monogamous. And so that's what I prefer. At first there was this freedom in what you were saying, like, what would happen? Then I started thinking about my partner doing that, and I didn't get those same, he should go explore those. I didn't feel that about that way. So
So
That's
I'm
funny.
wondering if a lot of that is conditioning, mononormative conditioning, that says this is the way we're supposed to be. When you love someone, you're supposed to be just about that person. You should not explore relationships with other people. But I like what Roberta said, and that is not all of those relationships have to be sexual. You find somebody
Right.
interesting. Maybe the two of you are in the same industry and your significant other is not, and you develop a platonic friendship with this person.
I
So
have
I mean,
no
we hear
problem
all
with
the
that.
time of like work wives and work husbands and like
Yes.
things like that. And so
Yes.
you do get like people in a weird way have an acceptance over it because they can label it. Oh, that's just like when they're at their 9 to 5, then they
Right.
have a level of engagement. But like,
I think you can have platonic male friendships. That's definitely. But when you're talking about poly, I thought you were talking about relationships. You are in, relationship with this person, not friendship.
well, it is. It is a relationship, and the relationship has is a spectrum. It could be, he's a friend when I'm mildly attracted to, down, all the way to I'm having a sexual relationship with this person. And so with poly, and there is, I mean, it depends on the people involved in the polycule, how those relationships take.
sorry, I'm learning all these new terms tonight, and some of them are really adorable. Sorry, that was one.
In the
The
poly,
polycule.
Roberta, I see, do I see a poly something in your future?
Just so I can use the terminology. No, sorry. Okay.
And the polycule is just people that you are engaged. You're going to learn some more terms, Roberta. So your polycule is, for me, my polycule would be my significant other. And while I have never met the women he is in relationship with, they're still a part of the polycule. And while he may not have met the men I'm in relationship or was in relationship with, that's still kind of my polycule.
Mm-hmm.
The people that he dates, they're my metas, META, women who are in relationship with the man I'm in relationship with. And the same for him. His meta would be any man that I'm dating. That's his meta. Like they call it's short for metamor. Metamor. And then there are some people who are in triads, and so they know each other.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who are in kitchen table polyamorous relationships where they literally everybody knows everybody. They hang out. It's kind of like what it says, kitchen table. Everybody sits around the kitchen table. They play games. They eat. They're in each other's lives. I choose, however, to stay parallel. I know they exist. They know I exist, and we keep it separate and parallel. But yeah, but jealousy, Sonia, is very natural. I think the thing is sitting with it, like why?
Yeah.
Why did you have that visceral response to even thinking about, yourself engaging in something like that, or even Derek, engaging in something like that? Like what are the things that are kicked up with you that causes
Mm-hmm.
this, feelings of jealousy?
Right. I'm
And
not.
that's
You want
and
me to
I'm only
answer?
asking that is because that's what polyamorous people do though. Like they'll
Yeah.
acknowledge it. They'll go to their partner and say, I'm jealous
Mm-hmm.
because of this, but they sit with it like, you know what? I'm probably jealous because of this. Maybe it's something I need to do. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
something my partner, because it's not always internal. Sometimes the partner is doing some stuff that like, wait a minute, you're giving this person more time than you're
Yeah.
giving me.
Yeah.
You have that time scarcity situation and you
Mm-hmm.
like, what's going on? So in the polyamorous community, people say in times like that, you sit and talk with your partner
Yeah. I mean, I do
and
just
see.
believe jealousy overall, no matter what it's about, relationships, material things, a friend, I do feel like you need to sit with that and figure out what it is that is causing the jealousy. So I think the feeling of jealousy, to me, it is just a feeling. Everybody experiences it, but you have to dig a little deeper and figure out why you're feeling that way, because it may
Yeah,
lead to something positive, right? And it may lead you to something that you need to work on. It's
that's
generally
true.
how I feel about jealousy. It's just interesting to me because you do grow up, and to your other point, like we've been conditioned I've been conditioned to, want monogamy. I prefer monogamy, not just because I like the idea of being with one person. I also just don't have the temperament to deal with a lot of people.
I can co-sign that.
I just
Yeah.
don't have the temperament to do it. Like juggling schedules Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I don't even know what day it is today. Okay. And so I just do not logistically have the time to do that. So I just know it's not my personality. But in your mind, you talked about some skills that are necessary, and I'm talking about practical skills, hard skills, soft skills, emotional skills. Like what skills do you need to have in order to be in a poly relationship?
So no one's perfect. What I'm going to say is, you have to just first be willing. You have to have an open mind and be willing to identify your skills that are where you're weak and work on those skills. I've always thought that I was a great speaker. I'm an attorney. I speak every day. That's my profession. I suck when it comes to communicating in a romantic relationship. I learned that I really just don't communicate in the way, like the depth of communication that's necessary for a relationship. Another thing is the ability to be introspective, to sit back in your discomfort at times and think about, why things are happening, why you're feeling what you're feeling, to sit back and say, this is how I'm feeling and why, and having the ability to come to some terms with dealing with that with yourself and with your partner. Patience, grace, because people are people, humans are not perfect. And infidelity, cheating can happen in polyamory. So I'm not even referring to that. What I'm referring
Hold
to
on.
is,
Can you explain that? I just want to pause 1 second. Now, if you
oh, sure.
already have additional people, how does cheating happen when you're in a relationship and you're dating? And the basis of the relationship is that you can have other people. So how does cheating take place?
So we think cheating is always about other people and sex. And that's not necessarily the case. You can have cheating in your finances, you can have some infidelity in some emotional ways. But I'm going to go back to boundaries and agreements. So let's start with the agreements. My partner and I have an agreement. We have an agreement that, let's go back to fluid bonding. Like he and I are having unprotected sex. That's how we interrelate. And our agreement is that anyone else, you are using barriers. I go out and I have unprotected sex with one of my secondary partners.
That's cheating.
That's cheating. There's an agreement.
It's a betrayal. Yeah.
It's a betrayal of trust. So, and whatever the agreement is, whatever that couple, whatever the polycule or that couple want it to be, like I can't dictate people's agreements. I may not agree with everyone's agreements either, but whatever that agreement is, and you have to stick to it, because if you don't abide by it without a conversation, then it's
Yeah. Do you think that this type of approach to relationships create the environment for, or even like encourage people to be more honest? Do you think there's more honest people and movement within these types of relationships than in other types?
Yeah, I think so. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't do the stats. I don't know the stats, but from my conversations and moderating a group, because people know that it's acceptable to have relationships with other people, and because they know that they're bound by agreements, they're more apt to be more honest about seeing other people. They're more apt to be honest about a lot of things in their relationship with that person. Because the community, like I said, the cornerstone is honesty and communication. And so it's almost like a requirement. I know that there are some people who are polyamorous. If they find a person who didn't tell them something or didn't communicate, they're cutting them off, because there could be some grave consequences when you're dealing with somebody like, why can't we be honest? Radically honest and having deep conversations. So I believe the community is more honest, and that saves a lot of heartache.
I do feel like you have to have a certain level of integrity maturity, in addition to just being honest. Like you have to, I feel like you have to know yourself and what your temperaments and what you like and what you don't like. You know, obviously you can discover some of that, but if you don't have integrity, if you're not an honest person just because that's the type of person you are, then you couldn't be in this type of relationship. Like it
And
couldn't
that's,
work. Yeah.
yeah, that's true too. And if a person's a cheater, they're a cheater. If they're a liar, they're a liar. And polyamory is not going to cure them of that, you know? Polyamory is not going to help them with that. But I think if a person just comes into a space of integrity and they're already a person of honor, it's easier to have hard conversations in a polyamorous relationship than it is to have in a monogamous relationship.
Mm-hmm. So, what misconception about polyamory pisses you off the most? Like, what is the one thing you just like, oh my God, I wish people understood and knew?
That it's just not about fucking. It's not about sex all the time. You know, polyamorous people are just not out here having orgies every day.
Right.
That's one misconception that just rankles. It's just like, whew, it's just, you say you're in a polyamorous relationship, they're like, "Ooh, y'all getting it on," no.
Are you a freak? Like that's what
You're a
people.
freak.
I
Yeah.
hate that, like, yeah,
Yeah.
assumption.
Yeah, and especially women. If I say that, my partner is polyamorous and I am practicing polyamory in the moment, they're expecting me to pop it on a handstand. Dude, I'm 57, soon to be 57, and we ain't popping nothing right around, So, but that's what they think, or that they use language like, oh, like Sonia say, "Oh, you're a freak." What they
Mm-hmm.
don't realize is polyamory takes a lot of discipline. And it takes a lot of vetting. Not everyone is just jumping into bed. Now the relationships are different. Not everyone is madly in love. Not everyone, sometimes they are, friends with benefits, and it goes to being in love and everything in between. But it's a whole lot of scheduling. And when you're an adult with adult lives, working adult jobs, scheduling really becomes a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
So people are not seeing people as often as people think, when I was dating, I wanted to see a partner. I could make it on Tuesday, but he was working late on Tuesday, so he couldn't do that. Then he's seeing his other partner so scheduling is a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we're not freaks out here having sex every day and orgies. Yeah,
Whew.
that's the big thing that bothers me.
So you are a part of Black and Poly. Tell us about this group, why you joined specifically, and why you're so involved. Like, what is the why? First of all, why is it Black and Poly? I mean, I have my guesses, but you tell us why is it necessary to have a group like this?
So one of the founders, Ron Young, he's one of the founders of the larger group, Black and Poly, said that, he was in the DMV and he identified as polyamorous, but there were no Black people in that space. Or at least very few Black people in that space. So when he would go to polyamorous events, it was just predominantly white. And, he said, we have to create a space for people who, like myself, who are melanated, Black, poly, we need a space for ourselves. Who knew 20 years later he would have Black and Poly DMV and other chapters? I'm saying chapters, but, groups under Black and Poly throughout the state. I mean, not the state, I'm sorry, throughout the country. And so I joined because when my partner and I started dating, I wanted to learn more about polyamory independent of him. I did not want his influence on how I thought about and processed polyamory for myself and just as a concept. So I went on to the search. I deep dived into the research. I joined a gazillion social media groups, predominantly white groups, Black groups, listened to the commentary, read the posts, grew, because I wanted to have an equal footing in this dynamic with my partner. I wanted to know just as much as he knew about this dynamic so that I could have a voice within my own relationship.
Hmm.
And what
And did
ended up
you not
happening,
have close friends or people within your circle or circles that were also in those types of relationship? Your face. I'll take that as a no.
so I mean, yeah, I have people in my circle who are non-monogamous,
Well,
They're
that's
but
missing
are
the
because,
they,
ethical
but are,
part.
right.
but are they ethically, but are they ethically so?
Right.
That's the part. That's the working part. That's the part
Hmm.
there. And and a lot of my girlfriends, my female friends, are very mononormative. They're very, what are you doing? Monogamous. Even when
Hmm.
when they were single, it's I'm only going to date this one guy, and if things don't work out, then I'll go to the next guy, and if that doesn't work, I'll go to the. I was like, I played the numbers
Nobody got
game. I'm
time for
going to
that.
date them all
Yes. I
and
feel
see
like,
who comes.
yes.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to
See,
say that seems
see,
like a good idea when you're dating to date multiple people. Um,
yeah, but you'll be surprised. There's some women who are like, nope, because I got to be good because society says I got to be a good girl, so I got to date one person at a time, so I won't be a hoe. Um,
mhm.
and so I went out there, got all the information I needed, found Black and Poly, DMV, and I love my group because we are grounded in education and community. We make it very clear that we are not a dating site for you to come in here and meet
Mm.
your people. We are about creating a community that's when we go out and we advocate for what we want as a community of polyamorous people, that we are given space and acknowledged and that we're viable, that people cannot reduce us to just a sexual group of people just getting together to have freak offs and sex and whatever.
Oh Lord, I don't think anybody ever wants to freak off ever again. I
Ever.
think
And no freak, no
no off.
off, no combination. I don't ever want to phrase ever
Never
again.
shall the two meets. No, no freak offs.
Right. The
Oh, I was
people
going to
in
say,
my
tell me
group.
about the people in your group. So, do you have families? Do you have people with children? Do you have dynamics where you talk
Hmm.
about asexuals? Do you have, are there therapy sessions? Like, do people go to therapy? Are there therapists that
Mhm.
what is in this community
Oh,
of people
it's a
that you get?
beautiful community. It's really a beautiful community. And it's a community of a mix of dynamics and relationship styles and family dynamics. We have a couple that just got married. We
Oh.
have couples that are middle-aged, professional, young people.
Mhm.
Single people who are just kind of making their way. We have, when I say professional, we have people who are lawyers, doctors, therapists, couple of people who are sex therapists. So our community is broad and is made up of
Mhm.
a lot of professional, vibrant, fun, intelligent people.
I love that. Like I love all that. I love that. And this, okay, so maybe I'll segue us into the final section and just talking about this approach to relationships in this age range, in midlife, if we want to say, or as we're getting more grown. Um, and is this a, I don't want to say trend, but is this something that more people are leaning to later in life? Do you see that as a thing or no? Yeah, so let's just start there.
Yeah, I think it's become really trendy with a lot of these shows that are popping up. So people have a false sense of what it is and they think it's just fun because the networks have to make ratings. So they create a lot of drama. But, and the numbers are still saying, because I crunched some numbers, I was doing some, research, and they're saying the younger generations, like the Gen Zs, millennials, are still more open to polyamory. People in my generation, the Xers and the boomers, we're less so. But what I'm seeing is something a little different. So I question those stats. What I'm seeing, interestingly, women who have been married for a long time, raised their children, being a dutiful wife, a dutiful mom, wake up one day and say to their husbands, I want polyamory. They don't talk about that. And just within the groups that I have been a member of for these past 5 years, I'm like, wow, we need to really talk about that. Women who are my age, or actually, I'm 57, but I'm talking about women who are in their 40s,
Mm-hmm.
who have been married. They're now willing, they want to be themselves. They want to explore parts of themselves that they weren't able to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes sexually. It's, romantic, sexually. They want to say, hey, this is what I want to do. I want to try it. And so that's one way women come into it, especially in midlife. Another
Mm-hmm.
way is, the husband is now deceased. They're now widows. And they never had that opportunity to explore. So now they don't want to marry. They don't want the relationship escalator. They just now want to have fun that they never had because they were raising children and being a wife. The third way that women come in is their husbands are still alive, but they have medical issues that impede their ability to perform in the romantic, sexually, I should say. They can still be romantic, but sexually. And so here's this woman who's still vibrant sexually, who wants to have sex, but the husband cannot. Monogamy says to us, oh, well, tough, to death do you part, for
Mm-hmm.
better and worse.
Right.
Is that fair for a woman in her 40s
Right.
who's
Still young.
still, she hasn't even hit menopause yet, who's still very sexual? So then is she to just wither up? And, so a lot of women are now saying, look, I want to try this relationship style. I don't want to leave my husband. I love my husband. I love our dynamic. But I want to have someone with whom I can have a sexual relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I wonder if, and this is just me because I'm in this boat of like women who are, in our 40s and who did not have the whole family, have the husband and have the family. And so, but we missed our window of, child rearing and the whole thing, and are exploring our different options as far as relationships. It's not, it's going to be the traditional kind of marriage or, what we thought we might want, expanding our options. So I don't know if that's a thing too. I kind of joke to Sonia sometimes. I'm like, okay, from here on out, I'm just going to take lovers. Every few years, you might see me with, I don't know, another person. But like, but joking, but also like, and I look at my peers because there's a lot of, I don't know if it's a DC thing or what, but there's a lot of Black women, I would say 35, 40 and up, who are in the same boat of like, we wanted, a monogamous marriage, whatever, and just didn't happen for us for any number of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And so for this kind of like other portion of our lives, looking at what we want, not just in relationships, but just across the board from our careers, all the things, and opening ourselves up to just different options and getting outside of the conditioning and all the other things that we
Yeah.
are, carrying.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there is a freedom in that, I think.
There is, and saying, listen, I've done professionally well. I'm making choices. I want to travel. This one I can travel when this one takes me, yeah, it's that women are in our group who are like that as well.
Let me ask you about, the right way to introduce your interest in poly to your partner. So if you're in a relationship and you are interested in poly, what is the right way to introduce it to your partner, to talk about it with them in a way that, where they can be open to hearing what you have to say?
Be safe.
Yeah, so what you don't want to do is already have somebody waiting in the wings.
Mm.
And
Please don't do
and
that.
I've yeah, don't have somebody waiting in the wings and all of a sudden now you want to be poly. That does violence to the core relationship. When I've talked to couples about it, there's something called polybombing. When a spouse comes home, and I'm just going to say spouse, but it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be a spouse, but a spouse comes home and says, by the way, I have this other person over here and we are in love and I want to see them and I love you too, so let's make it work. And what do you say to that after you've been with that person 20 years?
Mm.
You've got a mortgage, you have raised children, now got grandchildren, or you've been
Mhm.
with that person for 8 years or whatever, and you've got this emotional attachment. That's abuse, and it's wrong, and it's unethical, and it is frowned upon in the polyamorous community. The polyamorous community will say, well, great. If you really want to have a polyamorous relationship and you want to get off on a good foot, get rid of that other person. The outside person that you're considering, they should not even be a consideration between you and, should not be a consideration in your desire to pursue polyamory.
Because you have that specific person in mind and not really the lifestyle, not really
Right.
the commitment. It's like,
Right.
I want to be poly today.
Because yeah, only because that person's around. And people, I've seen the hurt and the pain that it causes. And it just also, I just talked to a couple and I said to the couple, give yourselves at least 18 months to do the research. Give yourselves that time to, one, shore up any weaknesses in your own relationship. Start dating each other again and learn new things about each other, focusing on your relationship. Learn about polyamory. Don't just go by what you see on the news and what you see on these sexy movies and shows. Talk about your boundaries and your agreements and write them down. What does it look like to you? Join a group like Black and Poly DMV because we're centered on education, we're centered on community, we're centered on healthy engagement. So join a group like mine. Yeah, that's a shameless plug. But join a group like Black and Poly DMV and talk to people who live the life day in and day out, not just for a day, but for their entire adult lives, many of them. And come and find community so that you can be supported. And then go out and say, when are we ready? Set a time. And when that day comes, have a ritual in place. Some people have, parting rituals where their partner will then start seeking to engage other people. And they think they're ready, but then when it happens, when that partner has their first date, they find out then, oh my God, I'm not ready. And that is why it's important to have community, because they can call someone like me, Deborah, he just went out on his first date. I know we talked about it for 18 months and I know we prepared, but he went on his first date. And when you have that community, you can then work things through and preserve and save marriages or established relationships.
I like that there is a respect for feelings, a respect and acknowledgement of feelings, because I think people think that you put those feelings aside, you ignore them, you push them away. But I think you're right. You have to be, like you said, radically honest and really just own the feelings and process them as they come, right?
Yeah. And I hope to, talk one day, if you guys invite me back, about agreements and boundaries, because that's very important too in sustaining this type of relationship.
Well, as we wrap this up, because I'm like, this hour went super quick, but I do want to ask you, how have you grown since you've been in a poly relationship? How have you grown? I'm just going to leave it at that.
My communication style has improved significantly. As I stated earlier, I always thought I was a good communicator. I just wasn't. And, I would keep things in. I would say things that just weren't helpful, as opposed to actually communicating my feelings. And I learned in this process, hey, I didn't like that. Let's talk about it. It was, yes, it was a part of our agreement, but that just wasn't feeling good to me. Before I just, oh, he should have known. He should have known. He loves me. He should have known. Now it's, hey, I know that we can do this. This is a part of our agreement. But what's going on there? Talk to me. Let's have a conversation. So I communicate much better now with my partner. And he taught me that. Not that, he sat down and said, this is how it's done. It's just by example, because I made some missteps too at the beginning. Because I didn't know, the rules of engagement. I didn't really know. I was learning, but I made a few missteps, and he extended grace and he said, look, that hurt. Let's talk about it. How can we work beyond that? How can we, fashion this into maybe an agreement? Is this something we can agree on? Is this something? And the conversation now between us flows beautifully. Now, don't get me wrong.
Wonderful.
Sometimes we have our moments, But overall, we have a good communication pattern with each other.
Awesome.
And so that's interesting that your biggest growth area sounds like is communication, but yet also of this community, you're a moderator. So I will ask one question of like, what does that mean to be a moderator? And also, there's no shameless plugs here. You plug all you want. So if someone were listening and interested and wanted to reach out to an organization, like how could they do that?
So definitely we're on Facebook, and it's Black and Poly DMV. And you can also join the larger group, Black and Poly. It's trademarked, so it will have Black and Poly with the infinity sign, um, and it's trademarked, and so you see the TM at the end. So definitely join us on Facebook. So yeah, the moderator, I'm the conversation starter, and I introduce concepts to discuss and also to just kind of keep the community safe. We don't, we engage in spirited conversations about various topics, but I also want everyone to be respectful. So I watch for those times when people are less than gracious and less than respectful, and I intervene. But that's very rare. When I say rare, it's very rare. But it's just keeping the conversations going and keeping the community engaged, discussing new developments within the community, also encouraging people to share. So there are three of us. I'm a moderator. There are two admins. We have an admin, Ashley, who is phenomenal at community engagement. She's the one who organizes the happy hours, the monthly meetups, community service. We do community service. So we go to a shelter at least once a year. I think she's trying to make it twice a year, where we engage with the, transient community, and we prepare meals. So we had recently our 10-year celebration, which is a huge success. One of the founders, Ron Young, came and participated. And then we have her partner, Darren. He does a lot of the education piece for the meetups. So we definitely work well together. And I'm the one who is constantly in the community, monitoring conversations, throwing things out there. So my last topic was dating interracially within a Black polyamorous community. And we don't talk about it enough. And how your other partners or your partners of different races, are they centered because of that? Are they fetishized because of that? So we talk about some really deep stuff as well.
Interesting. Well, thank you, Deb. This was a great conversation. I knew you were a good person to have to discuss it.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Good. We could definitely have you back to talk about, other aspects that we didn't touch on. So thank you for your time, and for everybody else, we'll see you next time.